Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. There are weeks when I at least attempt to sugarcoat the dismal fare that we're served up so regularly by the shady chefs who run the PC hardware kitchen. But this week, well, let's just say that I'm relying heavily on the blessings of Saint Bernardus here to get through it all. Try not to pull a Kyle. One last thanks to Russell from Tennessee. I've finally finished all the beer that you sent. By the way, if you'd like me to drink beer that you send, my P.O. box is in the video's description. To sum up this week though, RTX 5090 issues appear to be getting worse, and some are just showing up with missing ROPs, which directly affects performance. This is on top of black screen issues, the ongoing melting power connector annoyance, and the fact that these are the most expensive and least available cards ever to exist. The 5070 Ti launch came and went, with that card's potential also squandered by its lack of availability and immediate price hikes over the promised $750 MSRP. Tariffs are continuing to push PC hardware prices up here in the US, and it could get worse. And it looks like we've only got a week and a half more to be optimistic about the Radeon 9070 and 9070 XT until those launch and probably suck too. They say misery loves company, so thanks for joining me on this episode of Tech News.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. Our lead story today, RTX 5090 owners. Aren't you lucky? After dropping $2,000 on your new flagship GPU, or perhaps more like $2,500 to $3,000 or more, you have yet another reason for concern about your graphics card. It might be missing ROPs, or Raster Operations Pipeline Units, which handle tasks like blending and anti-aliasing. They're different from shader units, aka CUDA cores. The issue was first called out by Tech PowerUp forum poster Wuxi Gamer, who noted that GPU-Z was showing 168 ROPs for their Zotac RTX 5090 Solid instead of the expected 176. Tech PowerUp was like, hold on a minute, we should recheck our review card, because it's the same 5090 Solid model from Zotac, and they verified the same issue, which also explained why their benchmark testing showed an annoying drop in performance versus the Founders Edition or Gigabyte Gaming OC cards. Now, it's still too early to say for sure, but this issue seems to be hardware-based, meaning a driver or VBIOS update isn't likely to be able to fix it. And as additional testing by Tech PowerUp shows, the result is a non-negligible 5 to 6% drop in frame rates, or, if calculated versus an assumed $2,000 to $3,000 sale price for a 5090, about $100 to $150 worth of lost frames, which could buy you at least 2 or 3 bananas. This latest snafu with the 5090 only came to light Friday, but already more users are checking their cards, which requires an up-to-date driver, by the way, and it's now evident that this problem is not exclusive to Zotac. There's now an MSI RTX 5090D, as well as 5090s from Manly and Gigabyte that show the same missing ROPs. It's too early for Nvidia to have confirmed anything about this, but hopefully they come up with a response soon. The best guess so far is from Twitter leaker Megasize GPU, who says there might have been a defective batch of GB202 dies that shipped out to vendors, and even Founders Edition cards could be affected. Given how few 5090s there are on the market though, even a small batch of defective units could be like most of them, though. 5090 owners, you should definitely fire up GPU-Z after updating your driver. Let us know what you find out in the comments. Are you missing any ROPs? Now, if you were lucky enough to buy a 5090 though, and you had enough money, and yours didn't come with a 5% performance deficit due to missing ROPs, then you've gotten past most of the hurdles needed to game in peace with peak performance in 2025. But your power connector still might just melt. So go ahead and fork over even more money for an adapter like this one. It's a 12VH power connector with an active cooling fan and an LED display to show you the cable's temperature and power draw. Because thanks to Nvidia's obstinate refusal to switch away from this poorly designed power delivery standard, it's now up to questionable manufacturers on Taobao to design something that works around the shortcomings of this tiny plug that delivers up to 600 watts of power, sometimes all over the same wire. It's worth noting that this adapter does not have protection built in either, so it wouldn't stop the unbalanced amperage problem that's been demonstrated recently, but it will allow you to frantically glance at your PC regularly while gaming to make sure it's not getting close to melty hot temperatures. But at least you don't have to use those stupid old 8-pin PCI Express power plugs. I mean, those were slightly larger. How gauche. And hey, 5090 owners, again, I know all 15 or 20 of you tune in regularly, but there's one other small problem you might encounter, and that's when your screen just goes black, and then maybe you have to restart or reinstall your driver, which happens to be what happened to me when I first started testing the 5090 back in January. Black screens are extremely fun to troubleshoot because with nothing to view on screen, you get to just randomly guess at what might be going wrong. And thankfully, the problem is still nebulous, and the root cause is unknown, although a regularly suggested fix that can sometimes work is switching your motherboard over to PCIe Gen 4 mode instead of Gen 5. Didn't fix it for me. There are still plenty of reports of users with this problem though, which can affect all RTX 50 series cards and even RTX 40 and 30 series cards too. At the very least, Nvidia has now acknowledged the issue and that it exists. Huge win there for us consumers, and hopefully at some point in the future it will be mitigated with a driver and or vBIOS update. Until then, cross your fingers that it doesn't happen to your GPU that cost thousands of dollars. Good luck. Speaking of good luck, we could all use some of that with regards to the upcoming RX 9070 and 9070 XT GPUs that AMD will be announcing in a live stream on February 28th. The cards are rumored to go up for sale a week later on March 6th, and for now, early benchmark leaks are leaving room for optimism. Geekbench database entries have shown the 9070 XT aligning with the 7900 GRE performance-wise, while the 9070 is a bit more like a 7800 XT. Another more obscure leak via a Furmark benchmark database entry supposedly disguised as a 7800 XT, but that puts the 9070 XT closer to the 7900 XTX while outperforming the 7900 XT. It's also alleged that AMD claims the 9070 XT will be 40% faster at 4K than the GRE, and I will say, it's reasonable to assume that these cards will fall somewhere in that range. But whatever the performance may be, the pricing and availability will be the most important factors, especially immediately after launch. Now, not much has been said so far about availability, although we have not been warned of short supply as of yet, which Nvidia did preempt the recent 50 series launches with, so that could be a good sign that maybe they won't all sell out immediately. Also, there seems to not be a reference design coming out for the 9070 or XT, despite some earlier images that leaked. That was apparently just a concept design that won't be sold. Video Cards chalks this up as a good thing for buyers, as AIB partners might now have more GPUs allocated to them, helping to fill out the supply, but it's hard to say for sure without a direct statement from AMD. The price though, the price is truly the most vital spec for these cards, and my advice here is to be patient. Prices have been rumored anywhere from $500 to $900 for the 9070 XT, but early price leaks can come from a ton of sources, including retailers creating product pages with made-up placeholder pricing, and even, it has been rumored, the manufacturers themselves leaking incorrect prices to try to influence consumer perceptions of value prior to launch. I don't think AMD even knows what the prices will be yet. We will likely all find out at the same time on the 28th when they have some C-suite executive do a bunch of shots and then throw darts at a big sheet of prices while blindfolded, eventually screwing up their best opportunity to swoop in on Nvidia's mismanaged launches in years. At least, I've always assumed that's how the Radeon team prices their GPUs. Speaking of mispriced GPUs, the RTX 5070 Ti also launched this week, and Nvidia was quickly called out for telling everyone the price was $750 last month. In reality, it's a $900 to $1,000 card now that street pricing has normalized and all the AIB partners have shown their true colors. Those colors are mostly green because apart from the token $750 units, of which there were probably 2 or 3 of each, to avoid lawsuits, you know. The next step up was $900 plus, and annoyingly, a bunch of places were selling their MSRP cards for $750, but discounted from $900, so at any point they could just jack the price back up to $900. That is really dumb. The 5070 Ti is basically a 4080 or 4080 Super in terms of performance, minus 2 or 3%, and for $750, that actually could be somewhat reasonable, if not an amazing value. At $900 to $1,000 though, it's just a stagnant replacement at the same price for a card that has already been out since the 40 series launched. And so the discussion has not been about the 5070 Ti's performance, it has been about how Nvidia's insistence on drying up the RTX 40 series inventory prior to launch, and their reuse of to the same fabs for the 40 series and 50 series has led to another shortage situation where the 5070 Ti sells out immediately, even for the marked up prices, and there are no fallback options to buy instead since the 4080 Super and pretty much all the upper tier 40 series cards are sold out. And so, despite the odds, Nvidia has managed yet another disappointing launch. But at least we still have the RTX 5070, which surely won't suck too? That's coming March 5th, right alongside the Radeon 9070 and 9070 XT. Too bad March Madness is already taken. It should be an interesting week. Let's cap off this interesting week with some tech briefs though, which should always be taken orally. Speaking of Nvidia sucking, what if Nvidia didn't suck? Well, they attempted to do just that with this post from Nvidia Tim on Wednesday, announcing the reimplementation of their verified priority access queue for RTX 5080 and 5090 GPUs for buyers in the US for now. Basically, you log into Nvidia, fill out a form, and maybe after some indeterminate amount of time, you'll be lucky enough to be able to buy one of the GPUs that I and other reviewers have spent the past few weeks complaining about. Sorry to the new gamers out there, you needed to have an Nvidia account prior to January 30th to be eligible, and I doubt we'll ever see the actual sales numbers for gamers who are connected with the cards via this program, because that would be the best way to determine if this was actually helpful for gamers or just a bit of PR window washing for Team Green, given the current state of the market. And it would have been nice if they launched this last month when the 5080 and 5090 launched too. Speaking of the state and the market, the Trump administration's continued push to enact tariffs on foreign countries who import goods to the US is continuing to have the impact that basic economics predicts, and that is, importers who must pay a tax to the government to bring in goods then pass the cost of that tax on to consumers by raising the price of goods, and they often add a bit of padding to the price increase for good measure too. Acer CEO Jason Chen has confirmed their laptops will be getting a 10% hike beginning in March, and don't look for things to get better anytime soon either. There are now threats of 25% or higher tariffs starting in April that could affect cars, pharmaceuticals, and chips. You know, chips like CPUs and GPUs, which, let me check my notes. Yes, GPUs in particular could certainly be priced higher, no complaints from any of the gaming community there. Speaking of dumb things to complain about, Nvidia, again, is alleged to be conducting business in a less than forthright manner per Singapore's second Minister for Trade and Industry, Tan Lee Sand. Nvidia's GPU sales to Singapore, which is quite small in terms of both size and population, remember, are 28% of its revenue, which is a lot. More than half of what they sell to the US comparatively. Tan Lee Sand says that only 1% of those cards sold to Singapore actually make it there though, via a tricky method of selling goods called having a different billing and shipping address. The other 27% are shipped elsewhere though, and I'm not saying they probably go to trade restricted regions like China. The article is saying that, so Nvidia, you know where to direct your lawyers. Paul's Hardware, Tom's Hardware. No relation. But there you have it guys, tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you next week.